Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake the Attorney Mason. We got a lot of sports topics locally to get to. Don't know if we have a national topic this week or not. We got our gambling segment where you got to fade me on Kentucky, folks. I had a bunch of people screaming at me that I'm an idiot, and I am. But don't fade me on the best bet. It's come along very nicely for me thanks to the Fighting Illini. And my favorite portion of the podcast, you can ask me a question on any topic. Go to the Xverse. Hit up the hashtag AskSkinny. Anything. It does not have to be about sports. It can be, and we have a lot of fun with that at the end of the show. Rick, we got so much to get to. College basketball is kind of started in earnest with some exhibition games. We got some secret scrimmages that we can't talk about because they're super secret. And we've got, of course, the NFL and college football and so much more.
Yeah, I think I say this every time of year when we do this podcast or the next two podcasts, but this is my favorite time of the year. When you get that overlap where football and college basketball meet, and NBA just started this week, it's as good as it gets from a sports calendar perspective, in my opinion. But let's go to the Bengals first. And the first thing I want to talk about, Skinny, was the comments made by Joe Burrow after the win over the Browns. And it was basically asked if he was frustrated or upset with the offense's clunkiness. I've got the sound here.
Spoiled scoring 30 a couple weeks in a row and things like that, but do you get concerned about offensive clunkiness a couple weeks in a row at all? Or
well, we scored over 30 and we lost, and now we've won 2 in a row, so no, I'm not concerned about that.
So that was kind of, my opinion, the whole narrative after this loss. Like, a lot of the fan base wants to be
mad.
Wait,
after this win. After
this win, excuse me. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's so bad in Cincinnati,
right.
Skinny. It feels like a loss. That's the
exactly.
thing is, all these people want to get frustrated about the offense not playing well. And then there's this other side of the argument that is, it's an AFC North win for a team with a losing record. I'm not sure how much there is to be frustrated about. Where do you come out on this? Is it concerning to see the offense play like this?
Concerning, yeah, but then there's the caveats to it. I mean, Cleveland isn't a good team, but it is a good defense. Myles Garrett is a game record. JOK is a Pro. They literally have a Pro Bowl player at all 3 levels. Now, JOK was an alternate to the Pro Bowl last year, but he was a Pro Bowler. Joe Hayden is one of the best corners in the NFL. Their whole entire secondary is really good in coverage. They're really sticky in coverage. So that makes it tough. And you could see, Burrow got sacked a few more times than you would have liked, right? But he also held on the ball a bunch of times with a lot of time to look around. And guess what he didn't see? He didn't see open receivers. It's because Cleveland's pretty good on that side of the football. So, yeah, would you like them to roll up 30 on everybody and not have to worry about, but they're playing this defense this week? Sure. And there are some teams that are capable of that, namely Baltimore, I think, can do that against anybody. I don't know who else can do that against everybody else in the league. Hell, Kansas City doesn't do that against everybody else. They're winning because of defense. And then the other part to it is this. There is sometimes you just manage the game. And when the Bengals got up 21-6, there was nothing more to do than manage the rest of that game. They also missed 3 points when Evan McPherson missed a field goal. That puts it at 24. The week before, it got to 17 because of Chase Brown running in the end zone when he shouldn't have. But they also left points on the field when Zach Moss fumbled in Giants territory. So there's been a little bit of that too. And I do think the Giants defense has the chance to be good. Now listen, Philadelphia ran it all over them on the ground last week, but they didn't throw it for a ton, and the pass rush got after them a little bit last week too. So, again, I think it's just the product of the last 2 games you played more than anything else.
There's also something, and we talk about this in basketball a lot. I'm curious to get your thoughts if this applies to football some. It feels like the Browns and this defense and the personnel they have is a bad matchup for Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Throughout his career. It just has been tough for him. For whatever reason, against this defense, he seems to struggle more. Now, in football, it seems to be more like this team's good and this team's bad, so you should perform well against them and not against them. In basketball, we do more of this thing of like, hey, this team matches up well with this team and this team doesn't match up as well with this team. I think maybe there's some more of that in football than we probably talk about, right? Like the Bengals seem to struggle against this Browns team every year for whatever reason with these 2 current staffs, schemes, personnel groupings that they have right now. Maybe that's just part of it. And oh, by the way, AFC North wins are ugly. That's just how it is. Like, I don't think you need to apologize for any AFC North win.
No, the column I wrote after the game was that winning gritty is just as good as anything else. And I think that was a gritty win for them. And for a team that's looking to stack victories, would you like them to be aesthetically pleasing 35-10 routes? Sure would. It just doesn't happen in the NFL. I don't care who it is. I mean, rarely do you get crazy blowouts. You get them on occasion, and because a lot of times crazy things happen in that course of the game. And there are some teams that are overwhelming other teams, and that especially happens when injuries pile up. No, I don't think either one of these last 2 wins you need to apologize for whatsoever. I mean, you're looking to stack victories, and you got 2 on the road, 1 at an AFC North team you hadn't beaten since 2017 up there.
All right, but the concerning part of this conversation is what you pointed out before, which is Burrow gets back there, he's buying some time, he's moving in the pocket, he's looking, and nobody's open. Is there a lack of playmakers on this offense? And that's almost hard to believe because we go into the season talking about you have one of the best wide receiving cores in the NFL when you have Chase and Higgins. You have an improved tight end room. You have Chase Brown in your backfield, who everyone's expecting to be a big play type of guy. It's hard to believe we're at this point, but is that a real thing right now?
I don't think it is because you have 2 big playmakers on the outside, and they made plays on Sunday. I mean, T rips out of a tackle to go 25 yards for a touchdown. Jamar Chase makes a great move on the go route for his touchdown. He made a great catch the week before on a play where he caught it over his shoulder on kind of a scramble drill. The thing I think they're lacking, Rick, and you're kind of getting to the point a little bit. I don't think it's a lack of playmakers. I think Chase Brown's a playmaker. It's right now they don't have a third receiver they can trust or is able to get open. Andre Yoshivas was on the field for a bunch of snaps. He had 1 target, couldn't bring it in along the sidelines. Other than that, I don't have the advanced stat. I'm going to credit our guy Austin Elmore because I heard him say it on Cincy 360. His yards per separation were like one of the worst in the NFL last week. Again, I think some of that's a product of the Browns are just really sticky in coverage. The fact that they can play some man coverage on guys like, hey, we're going to double Jamar Chase on this play. We're going to put Joe Hayden on T. Higgins on this play. And we got another corner who can cover the other guy man to man, and we're fine. But I do think the fact of kind of the last couple of weeks, there just hasn't been a third option involved in the passing game. And maybe it's been a product of the game that Joe in key spots is definitively looking for T and for Jamar. And that's where I as I mentioned, he's kind of looking around. First option's maybe T on a play. Second option's Jamar. He goes to the third option. That guy's covered. And I think that's the problem at the moment. Mike Gesicki, for whatever reason, has kind of disappeared in this offense. And that seems hard to believe with how well he played against Kansas City. Eric All has done his thing as a blocker. He'll get involved some in the passing game. I'd like to see him get involved a little bit more, but I think that's the real thing as we move forward is who's going to emerge as the consistent third receiver. Is it going to be Yoshivas? Are we going to finally get Jermaine Burton to get his head out of his ass and get on the field and play? Is it going to be Gesicki kind of revitalizing himself? Is it going to be we're just going to lean into Eric All and go from there? I think that's the thing that needs to be found out for this team.
The lack of a third receiver is real right now for this Bengals team, but in terms of it being the excuse for this offense having some issues, I just question that a bit because it's not like other teams have 3 receivers better than the Bengals. Most teams don't have the 2 top guys that the Bengals have. So is the issue that the Bengals' third guy and tight end room is that bad, or is it that they're not figuring out ways to use them well enough?
Could be both. It honestly could be both. I mean, don't forget, listen, Andre Yoshivas is a nice story. He was a 6th-round draft pick. I don't know what I expect of a 6th-round draft pick.
But that's on the Bengals then, because they're the ones who decided to trust this guy and keep shoving them down our throats.
No, I think they've done it by default. I think when they drafted Charlie Jones, that was drafted a year ahead of knowing Tyler Boyd was going to be gone and Charlie Jones is going to be the future slot receiver. That hasn't worked out. Took Jermaine Burton. Yeah, he's got headaches and troubles, but man, the straight line speed and the playmaking ability hasn't worked out. That is on them. I'll give you that part of it. Andre Yoshivas isn't on them. Honestly, Andre Yoshivas for a 6th-round pick has overperformed the pick level, in my opinion. Whatever he gives you is gravy. So, yeah, the guys, though, that they really drafted to fill that role haven't filled that role, and that is on them.
Yeah, the Jermaine Burton situation, is there anything? I mean, is this guy a lost cause? Is there anything new on that? Do you think he might be getting better? Is it just that they don't trust him to know the playbook? Like, where are we at with him?
I think there's a lot to that. I think it's learning how to be a pro. It's being where you're supposed to be on time. It's translating that stuff to the practice field. I mean, honestly, I know people are bitching about this left and right. I hear it on talk shows. I see it on message boards. I hear it from friends, and they're wondering. Listen, if he was good enough to get on the field, they get him on the field. Because they need something like him, but he just hasn't shown them he can do it yet. And that's, to some degree, that's on him. And again, that's on them in the draft spot. But I don't think he's a lost cause. At least I hope he's not at this stage. If he's a lost cause at this stage, then the kid's just a lunkhead. I mean, that's on him.
Well, I would just say it's a little concerning that like he's not dressing for games. He's getting no run at all when they clearly are looking for another option. Anyone that could maybe.
But doesn't that send a message? Doesn't that send a message to everybody?
To me, it does. And that's why I wonder. It's like, oh man, does this guy just not have it at all? Is he not even close to what they want? Because you would think if he had any potential, if he was doing anything they liked, he would be getting an opportunity right now.
Same thing with Jordan Battle on the other side of the ball. Now, Jordan's gotten a handful of snaps the last couple of weeks, but some of that, the same situation. He needs to be a better pro. He needs to prepare himself better to play. And if he shows them a little bit more, I think that he'll keep getting a little bit more. His chances will expand, but he's got to keep showing them that. And I think both he and Jermaine Burton, I said the other night to some guy, I'm like, I do wonder, is this like an Alabama thing where they're just beaten so much into the ground as college players that they get to the NFL and go, whew, we're on easy street now. No. I believe it or not, the guy who was at Alabama teaching you these things and probably going overboard sometimes understands what it takes to win at a high level and should have prepared you for what you're going to go through in the NFL. And again, it feels like these guys get there and go, oh, thank goodness we're out from under.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that they didn't prepare them well at Alabama, and they were running a system that was great for college, super discipline, all that, but didn't equate to beat in the NFL and succeeding at that level, because there's plenty of other schools that have hard-ass coaches, and their players come out and have success in the NFL.
I don't know, man. Saban, I think, is one of a kind.
I don't buy that. I don't think he's much different than any of the top coaches. He can't beat Kirby Smart. He couldn't beat Kirby Smart at the end.
That's a good point. Do you
think Kirby Smart was too soft? Like, I don't.
I think he's awful soft on having about 90,000 guys arrested and letting them keep playing. That's a different argument.
Yes, it is. Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. Orlando Brown, Skinny.
Yes.
The injury there, big one for this Bengals offensive line. He is questionable for Sunday, it sounds like. Is that the reason?
Yeah, he practiced yesterday. We're doing this on Thursday morning on a limited basis. I'm assuming he'll go limited again today. We're taping this again before the Thursday practice. I would assume he goes full through the walkthrough and is able to play on Sunday. Then it's a matter of getting, can he get through that game? It's weird. So the injury is listed as a knee. It was announced as a knee on Sunday. After the game, he said it was his calf. Zach alluded to a calf on Monday, and then on the injury report yesterday, it shows up as knee. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe it's all tied together, but
the dreaded knee calf combo.
Yeah. I just don't, that would be a big loss. I thought I didn't get a chance to write it this week because he wasn't available in the locker room, and I don't know if he's going to be today, and it's going to be too late by today because I wanted to write it today. I thought Zach Moss had an underrated role in Sunday's game, the way he helped Cody Ford pick up Myles Garrett a bunch of times, and I think he's done a lot of that this year. He's missed one blitz pickup, but he's been really good in pass pro. I want to see more Chase Brown as a running back, but if it's going to be Cody Ford at left tackle, you're probably going to have to play Zach Moss a lot to help him.
Yeah, Skinny, you mentioned that it's going to be big if he's not able to play, or if he starts to play and then can't go, and they have to.
Yeah, you don't want this to linger, right?
Well, definitely don't want it to linger. But then also, I wonder, it almost makes me optimistic with the moves they went out and did this week, because they brought in Andrew Stuber from the Falcons practice squad, and then
they brought him in a couple of weeks ago, yeah, and just made him active.
Right, and then they also added this Andrew Coker guy out of TCU, but neither one of those guys, my point being, neither one of those guys are guys that I think you want to turn to and be like, we need you for major snaps to protect Joe Burrow on Sunday. Are you surprised that they didn't go out and try to find another guy with more experience or anything?
I think your point is right about that. That makes it feel more optimistic, and they're just adding some depth here, which they do need to have. But I also think it speaks to the NFL. I mean, everybody's scrambling for linemen. Everybody. There just aren't dudes out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. It's also like, I know some people have brought up the idea of Jackson Carman.
No, I don't think it's a crazy idea, because he knows the system at least.
That's what I was going to say. It's almost like to the point where at first your immediate reaction to that is absolutely not. But then you start looking around and you go, actually, I can't. There's nothing else that makes more sense than that, really.
Are Stuber and Coker better? I have no earthly idea. They certainly haven't played. I've at least seen Jackson Carman play in games and be serviceable, right? I mean, we've all seen that.
Yes. This tells me how much they hate Jackson Carman.
No question. No, there's no question
he was
about
the obvious answer.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I thought that honestly, if it came down to them desperately needing a backup for this week, that they would have gone and gotten Jackson Carman off the Jacksonville. I think he's on off the Jacksonville practice squad.
Yeah. All right, Skinny, the other topic that a lot of the media types wanted to bring up, at least the YouTube crowd wanted to bring up this week, is, of course, the NFL trade deadline is approaching. It'll hit next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Do you think the Bengals are going to make a move? Do you think there's talk of making a move right now? Like, I know there's a lot of interest in that from the fans' perspective and media perspective.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I'm the one media perspective that doesn't dive into that, because it's almost a moot point, because they just don't. Yeah. I mean, we can throw out. Listen, it's easy click stuff. It's easy conversation stuff. They need to go trade for Cooper Kupp, or they need to trade for this pass rusher. Guys, they're not trading for a pass. Listen, they believe
Max Crosby isn't going to be a Bengal next week?
No. So here's the thing. You don't have to like this as a fan. I'm just going to lay it out, though. Listen, they like what Joseph Osai is doing all of a sudden. They like Miles Murphy because he's a first-round draft pick, and they need to play that out. They like their 2 starters. There's 4 defensive ends. You're not bringing in a 5th. You're just not. I'm sorry. You're. It's not going to happen. Now, if there's an injury, if Trey Hendrickson suffers a season-ending injury this Sunday, then yeah, you probably would have to go get a defensive end who's a pass rush specialist. I would give you that part. But as it sits right now with the roster, don't waste your breath on it, in my opinion. I guess it's fun for some. It's like mock drafts, and I'm guilty of those as well, that, hey, when the time comes, it's fun to do those. But it's almost a moot point, because they just don't.
Well, I totally get the idea of like needing the clicks. You got to write something. It's a certain time of the year. You just put it out there. But what interests me is some of the guys who get so into it, like, I actually think they believe it. Like, I believe there are certain media members in this town that think the Bengals are trying to trade for Cooper Kupp right now.
Or think they're GMs.
I don't know. It's funny.
I mean, no, I think it would be nice if they did it. But they just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't like to give up draft capital. That's what you're going to have to give up. I mean, I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I just don't see it. If there was a track record of this, I'd go, hey, man. And listen, I did a stint with our buddy Chad Brendo, who was filling in for Mo Egger yesterday. And I will say, I thought Chad brought up an interesting point, and I think there's truth to this. I do think more NFL teams are looking at the trade deadline now like baseball teams look at the trade deadline. That's why I think you see more of a flurry of activity. Like, teams have already decided to cash it in or cash it out, right? Like the Raiders giving up Devontae Adams. Part of it, Devontae Adams just became an ass. Same for Amari Cooper in Cleveland. He became insufferable, and understandably so, because he had Deshaun Watson throwing to him. And so he banged his shoe on the table till they made a trade and got it game to Buffalo. But I do think that you are seeing some teams say, all right, listen, our season's kind of in the tank here. Let's get something back in return for this, and let's go. The Bengals love their draft capital, Rick. They just love it. And because they love it, whether we like it or not, we can argue about it. We can yell about it. We can point the finger of blame at them. And we can certainly do it in retrospect if they don't go trade for a guy who another team trades for and makes themselves better. And you go, that could have been our guy. I get all of that. But the point is, they just don't. So why waste your breath on it?
I think the term draft capital, like the popularity of that term, has led to the increase in teams making trades around now, because everyone's obsessed with acquiring draft capital. It's all I hear now in NFL.
Well, but part of it too is you're paying so much for superstars that you do need a bunch of guys on rookie contracts. You really do.
Yeah, well, that's what happens if you're going bad, right? Like, you realize we can't pay a dude all this money anymore. Right. Get him out of here, and let's get young the next year or two.
Yeah, no, I thought that was an interesting point that you do. I think it's getting felt more like kind of the baseball trade deadline, where that's where teams that are out of it go, okay, let's get your prospects, your best guys, and we'll give up this guy because we don't want to pay him any longer.
Yep. There's one other thing I want to bring up that kind of relates to the Bengals-Browns game, but before we do that, it's because it's off the beaten path. We'll probably go down a wormhole here.
I love it.
The Eagles matchup. Anything else there that stands out to you about this?
I do. I think it's really cool that the twin brothers who were born 2 minutes apart will now get to face each other in an NFL game. Sidney Brown for the Eagles and Chase Brown for the Bengals. I'm writing that story today, actually. Got it started. These guys are so. They literally talk to each other every night. They're inseparable. They played together growing up through college. The first time they're on different teams, they get to face off. Chase's brother just got off injured reserve last week, played his first game of the season. And, talking to him yesterday, I said, how often do you talk to him? He said, oh man, we talk every night. And somebody else followed up and said, well, how about this week? He goes, no, we're not talking this week. I'll talk to him before the game. I may call him up before they travel and say, hey man, safe travels, but we're not talking this week. I think that's pretty cool to see twin brothers facing off in an NFL game.
It's awesome. It also, is that one of those things where the parents are just so freakishly athletic that every kid they have was going to be a professional athlete? Or did that dad pull off the 1 in a million miracle where he had that one shot in a million to produce an NFL athlete and he got a 2-for-1 deal in it?
Yeah, that's incredible. That really is.
By the way, that's the cooler story than the other family that we saw make history together this week with LeBron and his son.
Oh, my land.
Not to get down that. Maybe we'll talk about that in Ask Skinny Anything.
Yeah, is there one for that? Because I've got an opinion on it.
Yeah, we'll bring it up for Ask Skinny Anything. But first, I want to ask you about something else that's going to probably get you worked up.
Yes.
I was listening to you and Tregs do your post-game podcast.
Okay.
And I'm going to call you out on something because I don't believe you believe something that you said in that podcast.
Okay. All right.
The whole cheering for Deshaun Watson's injury situation, you guys were lambasting the Cleveland faithful all over them for cheering when Deshaun Watson got injured. And you guys did the whole internet thing of like, he shouldn't do that. That's bad. I don't believe you believe that.
I do believe that. In fact, I'll tell you this. There was a Kentucky-Purdue game I went to as a teenager, and I remember it vividly. It was a good Purdue team. They went to the Final Four back in 1980. They were playing in what used to be called the UKIT, the UK Invitational. They'd have a 14 tournament around Christmas, and it was a tradition for my dad and I and another dad and his son to go to that in that time frame. And so a kid for Purdue got hurt, a kid named Brian Walker, and this lady, she goes, "Get that bum off the court. You're a bum." And I turned her, I go, "Why don't you shut the blank up before I drop you?" I just don't think there's a place for that kind of stuff. I just don't.
Skinny, I don't know if saying you're going to hit a woman in this Deshaun Watson situation is the right way to.
I know. I just don't think there's a place for that. I mean, listen, he's a bad person. But at the end of the day, I mean, are we really rooting for guys to get hurt? Are we really doing that?
No, I don't think that's a good way to go about things. And I don't think that's what people typically do. But this is an extenuating circumstance. This isn't the same as some random dude at Purdue who had never done anything to your knowledge prior.
But you know what's so funny about all this, Rick, is, when the Browns made the deal with the devil to trade for him and give him all that money, I can guarantee you 99.9% of Browns fans were, "We got our guy. He's our guy." And then when he sucks, it's like, "Well, now I'm glad you're hurt." No, you just have an opinion from the jump street.
I agree with that. The boos were partially because he stinks for certain.
Yeah, actually, he was actually playing a pretty good game.
In that game, yes. But the boos started, by the way, before the game even happened.
I told you what was going to happen, right? That they were going to introduce him. He's going to get booed. And right after, it's going to be Nick Chubb for a reason. He's going to get introduced last because they want to turn the boos into cheers. That's literally what they did. I get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am fully on board, but I'm not naive enough to think that like all of Cleveland was waiting for this moment. And then when it finally happened, they're like, "All right, now we're booing you because of all the bad things you did to women." This was absolutely because he stinks at football too. And they wanted him out. I fully am aware of that. And I fully agree with that. The thing is, I don't believe that it actually bothered you. I think this is like one of those things we do because the internet tells us we have to. And I don't believe that you actually cared that people cheered that Deshaun Watson got hurt. One, he's an absolute scumbag who sexually assaulted a bunch of women.
Agreed.
And two, what if one of the women were there cheering when he got hurt? Would you tell them, "Nah, knock that off"? I don't think you would. I think you'd be fine with them doing that because he's a scumbag.
Yeah, I just don't feel like there's a place for it. I just don't.
I don't think you're going to cheer for him, but I don't think it bothered you that Cleveland fans did, is my point. I think you said that because it's what we do.
I didn't tweet it out in the moment because it didn't move me all that much in the moment, but I did hear it, and I'm like, man, I didn't think it said out loud in the press. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Fair enough. I will go on the record and say, boo him all you want. It does not bother me. The guy is
actually, it's more cheer. They were cheering the injury. I don't mind them booing him when he gets introduced. That part to me is not.
You're right. They cheered his injury was the issue. I should clarify. It was cheering, not boos. But cheer him all you want when he gets injured. If you're at someone who's sexually assaulted, now look, if you had one case in your history and it's ambiguous and no one knows, like you got cleared of all of your wrongdoings, I do think you should have a life. I don't think you should be held to that forever. If you have 30-something accusations against you and there's clearly some fire there where the smoke's coming from, I mean, you're kind of a scumbag, man. I don't really care if like people are worried about you getting hurt or not. You'll be fine. It's not a life or death situation. He got hurt. He's going to have to rehab his ankle while he gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't feel bad for people cheering for that. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
He may never play again, and he's going to cash all those checks for sure. I will say this. I do feel really bad for Kevin Stefanski, the coach. I mean, the move that they made pregame to take some heat off Deshaun Watson, because everybody's claiming for Jameis Winston, right? They're claiming for him to be the starter, and I get it. Hell, and after week 2, I thought they should have benched him.
We were saying
trying to win games. But for them to then make him the third quarterback so he wouldn't be looking over his shoulder in the game was priceless in my opinion.
And then you need him. And then you need him.
And then you needed him. Yeah. I mean, and now he's going to start this week.
Thank God that happened, by the way, because they might now. Dorian Robinson did lead them on a drive, but like they might have won the game had Jameis been in there right away.
I think they would have won some other games. I mean, they might have beat the Eagles at the Eagles with Jameis Winston instead of Deshaun Watson. But when the owner screws up so badly and handcuffs the coach, my Lord Almighty, what a mess.
I do agree. Now, by the way, the other part of that is I don't feel bad for Cleveland fans at all that they had to suffer through this Deshaun Watson, because you're right. They were all happy when they got him for the most. Not everyone, but there were a lot of people that were plenty happy and were hoping he was going to be playing well when they got him. And if he was playing really well right now,
sexual assaults be damned. You're right.
They would be overlooking it. They would absolutely be fine with him if he was playing well. So I agree with that part of it. I don't think they're like some moral compass up there in Cleveland. I get so sick of because the internet gets outraged about stuff. Now we all feel like we have to play by a certain set of rules. It's like, if you want to cheer for him getting hurt, I'm fine with that. He's scum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell people what to do. You do you. I wouldn't do it. I think it's just disappointing that people did it. That's all.
Fair enough. I wouldn't do it either, but I don't disagree that it's disappointing. It didn't bother me whatsoever. Let's move on to college football. Cincinnati beat Arizona State 24-14. They'll play at Colorado 10-15 Saturday night in a Big 12 showdown that I don't think anyone was expecting to be such a big game when this season started, but I'm excited about this one, Skinny. This UC team goes down 7-0 in the Arizona State game.
I mean, it was quick.
And then they scored 24 straight and were able to hold off Arizona State the rest of the way, especially that fourth quarter where, they score at the end of the third quarter there, and you're like, okay, you could have a game on your hands in the fourth now, especially with UC's defense and some of the issues they've had. But the defense hold them off the entire fourth quarter, kept them from scoring. They ended up winning 24-14. I thought, we could really maybe look at the last three wins. You've got the Houston 34-0, the UCF win at UCF, and then this win. Those might be the three most impressive games in the Satterfield era. So,
yeah, I would agree. Now, here's the question, and this kind of times up with the Bengals a little bit too. Are the Bengals' defensive performances the last 2 weeks sign of progress? Yeah, I think they're sign of progress. But you also have to have the caveat of look at what they played. The performances you're talking about, the three performances also had that game at Texas Tech sandwiched in between it, the 44 points. So were those three performances because Houston's a mess offensively just in general? Is it because Arizona State played without their starting quarterback and UCF, I think, played 7 different quarterbacks in that other game? I do think it is. I think it's both. I think it is a sign of progress for the UC defense, but I think it's also you didn't exactly play a murderer's row there of dudes. You don't have to. I'm not asking for anybody to apologize for it. Like I said, the Bengals don't need to apologize for the 2 wins they have, but it's always a kind of a chicken egg. So, I actually asked Lou Anarumo this. And I tried to couch it without basically saying you played 2 shit-ass teams the last 2 weeks. I said, you didn't exactly play dynamic offenses the last 2 weeks, but did you see things that show a sign of progress? And he kind of gave me a look like, I know how you're asking this, and he gave me a pretty good answer to it. And that's kind of where I'm at with UC, that this next game is, all right, here comes the litmus test for your defense. How much progress has it made? I hope I can stay up for it. I really do. I would hope if I can get through the first half and it's a good game, I'll fight my way through the second half. But man, the 10-15 start, daggone.
What you said is correct about this UC team and even that parallel to the Bengals. But this UC team is in a much different spot, in my opinion. To me, coming into this, now you had a higher opinion of them. You said all along that you thought they would get a bowl game and everything, and you proved to be accurate there. But coming into the season, I was still wondering if this team could win more than a couple of games all year long. So to see them play this defense, whether or not you're playing backup quarterbacks or whether or not you're playing some of the worst offenses in your conference or not, I'm still impressed with the defense showing signs of consistency, showing the ability to hold up and hold on to a lead, because quite honestly, I didn't know that they'd be able to do that. They couldn't last year, and there were signs early this year after that Pitt game that maybe we were going to be back in that same spot. And I know the Pitt game kind of shaped the narrative for a lot of the season, the way it went early on, but now everyone in the city, I saw all the people posting, what about Scott Satterfield now? Look at their record. Look at what they did. So I think people are trying to come around on him, and that Pitt game set him back significantly to start the year, but I just didn't know that they'd be good enough to do the things they're doing right now, even if the other team stinks, Skinny.
Yeah, and I will say this, and Arizona State did have their best running back, Scatabo, and he's a really good player. The Sims kid who started at quarterback had started games at both Georgia Tech and Nebraska. He had, I think, 30 career starts under his belt. So it wasn't like they faced a nobody. They just didn't face the starter. So again, it is, to me, it's just one of those ones where I do see progress. It's hard not to see progress, but is that progress in part because of who you've played? And I think, again, this week you're going to find out just how much progress have you made in facing the Colorado offense.
If they beat Colorado, we're talking about a potential Big 12 title game for this UC team.
That's just it, Rick, and there's no question. So you got two teams tied at the top right now in the Big 12, in BYU, who UC does not play, and Iowa State at 4-0. You also have Kansas State in there at 3-1. Well, you do have the tiebreaker loss with Texas Tech at the moment. But again, just let's presume Texas Tech loses another game along the way, because they probably will. I mean, you kind of, to your point, you beat Colorado, then you've got West Virginia at home, and then you've got two games that you do control your own destiny, Iowa State and Kansas State. They're both on the road. They're both going to be underdogs in both. They're both going to be really hard to win. But at that point, I think you would control your own destiny. Then you play TCU at home to finish off the season. You would control your own destiny to maybe get to the Big 12 title game. So it's not out of the realm of thought if you win this Colorado game at all.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you slip up in that UCF game, which they weren't even close to, they played well in that, or if you don't win this Arizona State game, then those games feel way different. If you go into them with a chance for a Big 12 title, you're probably not going to win them. You're going to be the underdog. But Skinny, those games turn into
very interesting,
fun games UC fans have seen since they were going for a playoff.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that turns this season into something completely different.
Sorry about that, Rick. From the point of what you made earlier, I mean, after the Pitt loss, it felt like, is this going to spiral into another 3-9, 4-8? And is that going to be it for Scott Satterfield? Time to fire him? All those things. And I understand that line of thought. I mean, there wasn't much to hang a lot of hope on, other than they played 3 really good quarters. Well, you got to play 4, and they didn't. And it felt like, well, there was one of the winnable games that goes by the wayside. Where else are some winnable games? And instead, I mean, you wake up and they're 5-2 with 2 close losses that arguably you could be 7-0 right now.
Now, with this matchup against Colorado, one thing that just jumps out to me, because it's been something interesting about this UC defense all year. They don't rush the passer much at all. A lot of times they're only rushing 3. They don't hardly ever blitz. They've almost always got 8 dropping back in coverage. I think Dante Corleone being available and being healthy has helped them a lot. That improved that defensive attack once he got there, because they were able to get a little more pressure up front with him, even only rushing 3. But my concern is, you go up against Shedeur Sanders and you give him a lot of time back there. If you can't get to him because you're only rushing 3, that would be my concern. Because you can say whatever you want about this Colorado team, but the one thing that is 100% certain is Shedeur Sanders can put up some big numbers, especially when you're not putting pressure on him.
Yeah, then the other part, too, is if you do send a bunch of blitz stuff, he does do a really good job of just standing in, and he can launch it a long, long way to some dudes who can really run, and then you invite a bunch of big plays to happen against you. So, can they get home with minimal rush? And if not, to your point, Shedeur Sanders probably picks them apart. Then do you have to blitz a bunch? And if you do, then you're one-on-one with a lot of fast guys. It's a tough spot to be, to your point, if you can't get pressure on with the minimal guys you're getting pressure with.
And this is where Sorsby and the offense, I think, can really help them out. They're a little bit more like game management style on the offensive side. Colorado, they'll waste some possessions. They want to find a rhythm. They want to take some shots. I think if you can control the time of possession, which is what UC has been good at, if you can keep Colorado's offense off the field and out of rhythm, then I think it gives you a much better chance.
You know what I would do as a coach? I honestly, whoever Travis Hunter covers on defense, I would just he literally takes himself out of every play. You just go run deep. Just keep running deep. We're going to run this dude to death. Keep running deep. Keep running deep. Doesn't matter. Whoever lines up against you, you're the guy running deep.
Run go routes as fast as you can, as far as you can. And if not, then we're putting some big physical wide receiver, if it's like a run play, and we're just abusing him. We're running right through his chest and hammering him on blocks.
Dude, I don't know how many people really can appreciate what that dude does.
It's unbelievable.
Maybe they do. Maybe they do. It just seems impossible at that. It's hard enough when it's Class A Kentucky schools playing Class A Kentucky schools for kids to go both ways. We're talking Power 5 college football, and him not only doing it both ways, doing it literally almost every snap and at a high level both ways. It's crazy.
Not getting tired is one thing, Skinny, but the more impressive thing to me is he hasn't gotten injured.
Yeah.
Think about all the snaps and the fatigue that sets in.
Yeah, I think he got hurt on like a diving knockdown, something like that. But yeah, to your point.
But I mean, we haven't blown an ACL. We haven't lost an Achilles, the type of overuse injuries we talk about. He hasn't faced those despite playing an insane amount of snaps.
It is crazy to watch. I remember the very first game that he played for Colorado. I know that had been talked about because it was on TV. They played, I think it was TCU, and they won. It was a crazy back and forth game. I think Shedeur threw for like 500 yards in that game. They just kept throwing bombs. But I knew he was a thing, right? A two-way player thing, but I didn't know like to that extent. I kept going, this dude don't come off the field.
It was unbelievable watching him the first couple times last year. I mean, we had seen him at Jacksonville State or whatever, but that's different. Jackson State, I should say.
State, yes.
That was different than this, doing it at the Big 12 level. Let's wrap up our college football segment with Kentucky, who got blasted at Florida 48-20. They play at Auburn Saturday at 7:45. Skinny, is the offensive coordinator churn? I mean, I know defense is an issue. I know turnovers are an issue, but like when I look at this team and why they're so much worse than I expected them to be, is the offensive coordinator churn one of the big issues here, that they just can't find any consistency on that side?
I think there's some truth to that. And I don't know, is that a Mark Stoops thing because he wants to play a certain way and coordinators come in with their ideas and he's like, no, we're going to slow the pace down and we're going to win with, and that's fine. But then stop hiring guys you think are going to get creative on offense and then not let them do their things. I don't know how good Bush Hamden is as an offensive coordinator. Didn't even know anything about Bush Hamden until he showed up here to be the offensive coordinator. I'm watching Liam Cohen do some pretty good things down in Tampa Bay with that offense at the moment. And I saw him do some good things with Kentucky when he was allowed to do good things with Kentucky. This season has felt wacky from Jump Street. Like, the first game gets called short because of the thunderstorms. And then the South Carolina game comes and then you got a chance to beat Georgia, but you don't. And it feels like they've never got into any kind of sync, rhythm, whatever. It feels like they felt like they arrived after beating Ole Miss. And now you've had these last two clunkers. And honestly, if you don't beat Auburn, I mean, other than Murray, which is just god awful, do you even come close to winning another game? I know Louisville's defense stinks. But, at that point, do guys check out? I mean, after this is spiraled out of control, and they have wasted a lot of good talent on defense, man.
Well, here's the thing. They have 5 games left. You need to win 3 of them, right?
Yeah, it would be Auburn, Murray, and Louisville. They're not beating Texas at Texas or Tennessee at Tennessee, in my opinion.
Well, that's my point. You got to win all 3 of those, quote unquote, winnable games out of those final 5. I mean, can they do that?
I don't know. The way they lost, it's not just losing at Florida. It's not a very good Florida team, but it's still an SEC team on the road. But the way they lost that, it was just ugly. It was
like South Carolina again.
Disarray, penalties, just stupid stuff, disorganized. It's just like a team that's not coached very well. And listen, I've never been a big Mark Stoops guy. I do give him credit for getting this program on a level of consistency. And there's something to be said for that. And he deserves credit for that. And of course, there's occasionally the nice blip up to 10-win seasons. But, now it feels like, can he really ever recover from this, especially now that the SEC has added 2 more powerhouse type programs, one of them, Oklahoma, not playing very well, but my point. I mean, are you now heading back towards, kind of relegation to the bottom of the league every single year? And if so, does a new coach fix that, or is it time for just a new voice? I don't know where to go with that. I lean towards it probably is time for a new voice, but I also have to admit that while I'm not a huge fan, I do think he's done right by the program for the most part.
I'd be on the side of saying Mark Stoops has done a great job and you're not going to do better than Mark Stoops. People should get a reality check in Lexington. If it hadn't been for the weird issues that Mark Stoops has had with the fan base, with Coach Cal, he's just been cantankerous and
whining about NIL
while he's getting paid an incredible salary to be the head coach at Kentucky. Those things would
flirting with Texas A&M.
Those things would make me say that he might be checked out, or it might be time for him to look for something else, because he's just, when you get bitter about the place that you're at and you just complain about it, it's not going to go well typically. And this season seems to be maybe a harbinger of that. And
I think you bring back some level of hope for next season. If you do win 3 games and get to a bowl, I don't know if 6-6 and going to a bowl is always the goal, but I think at this point I would take that, because it would also include a win over Louisville. And I think you could take that and at least go into the offseason going, okay, we got some pieces back. We got some things to move forward with. We got some things we need to fix. But, man, if you spiral this to the point where your only other win's over Murray, I just don't know at that point.
Yeah, at a certain point, it becomes, okay, well, don't you just go get the cheap guy from the MAC, the next up-and-comer out of the MAC, and then give him as much NIL as you can and see what you can do? Because, I mean, if this is the best you can do, paying a guy $8 million a year or whatever he's getting, then I just don't know that it makes sense.
How did you come up short at running? Like they only have like 3 or 4 running backs on the roster. I mean, how do you come up short at running back?
At Kentucky, a place that has been like defined by running the football.
And listen, I know Chip Trayanum getting hurt didn't help matters because he was going to be the starter, and you felt like that you probably had enough depth. But in college football, man, you really never have enough depth.
No, that's the truth. But the problem is you got to pay them all now, Skinny.
Well,
it's hard to stack depth when they all cost money. That is one thing that teams are finding out.
Yeah.
All right. Ohio State's coming off the loss at Oregon 2 weeks ago. They had a bye this past weekend. They will host Nebraska at noon.
I'm going to call the defense. I'm going to call the offense. I'm going to call I'm calling everything.
Ryan Day coming off a loss. We'll talk more about that in our Pick'em segment. But Skinny, college basketball time. It is just 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away now from the start of the college basketball season. That'll get underway on Monday, November 4th with all the first games. Pretty much every team is in action.
Yeah.
We had Big East Media Day this week. Xavier was picked 3rd behind UConn and Creighton. Davion McKnight and Zach Fremantle were 2nd-team All-Big East selections, and Ryan Conwell, the Indiana State transfer, was a 3rd-team All-Big East selection. They also played a public exhibition against Dayton for charity. They won that 98-74. They shot 59.3% from the field. They made 12 of 26 from three-point range for 46%. 7 players in double figures. 7 different players accounted for those 12 three-point shots. Fremantle led all scorers with 17. Marcus Foster, the Furman transfer, had 15. I've read off a lot of things there. Is there any part of it that stands out to you?
Two things for you. One, and I've asked this of the UC win, which we'll get to. Kentucky's win last night, was that a product of them playing really well, or a product of Ohio State not playing well, or Dayton not playing well, or Kentucky playing Kentucky Wesleyan? Maybe it's a combination of both. But to that point, I think for all these teams, because they had multiple guys scoring double figures and doing things in their games, I think it's a sign that it's a great sign that you've got multiple weapons you can go to. Now, maybe you can argue who's the guy on each team that's going to have the ball in their hands at the end of a close game. Maybe that question still needs to be answered for all three. But I think where it comes to Xavier, and well, all of them really, but for Xavier in particular, because we're talking about them, I think that's a great sign for them. Again, I don't know, Rick. I mean, you can correct. I mean, was Dayton or was that more a product of Xavier playing well?
Dayton was, I mean, Xavier kind of blitzed him a little bit early on by making shots, and then Dayton started pressing him, and Xavier just made more shots on the back end of the press, and then you're down by 17, 20 in the second half, and it just kind of got a little sloppy from there. So that is what it is. I'd also say with the transfer portal now, it's like if you're not hitting the ground running, you can look so bad early on in these exhibitions preseason, and you can look completely different in a week or two. Also, like they really mean very little. And that's what I would tell you for any of the fans of Xavier, UC, Kentucky. It means very little that you played well and that you won by 70 points if you're Kentucky, or
I think it means something that you played well. I don't know about the margin means anything.
It means very little, I would tell you, but there is a preliminary good sign there that the depth and the ball movement and the offense that we all think that these teams might have, it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there might be things that need to be figured out in certain matchups. There might need to be like, who's your alpha, who's your go-to, what's the best lineup, what's the most efficient lineup, all of those things. But the depth, the skill level, the ability to put the ball in the basket, it's there for all of these teams. And we've talked a lot about the coaching changes, the storylines. There's so much going on in local college basketball, just the teams we cover and talk about, that I couldn't be any more giddy about the start of this college basketball season, because all of it looks like it's coming to fruition.
Yes, which is really, really cool. The only other thing that I was going to say, I said there was 2 things. The other thing, Davion McKnight was a 2nd-team pick, really.
Yeah, surprised me a little bit. I would tell you, if it were me, I would definitely flop him and Ryan Conwell if I was good. I don't know that Davion would be on any of my teams, but if I was going to do him, Ryan Conwell would be 2nd team and Davion 3rd team for sure.
Again, I'm not trying. I think Davion McKnight's a good, solid player. I mean, I got a chance to coach against him in high school. I like Davion McKnight. It's just, is that a product of attrition in the league, maybe?
I think it's definitely that. There's fewer established guards than you think. And some of the ones that may end up being really good are transferring up from a mid-major level, maybe. So it's like, well, do you give it to that guy, or do you give it to the guy who's already averaged double figures and played 30 minutes a game in the conference with the best assist to turnover ratio? I get all of those things, but I also think he's one of those players that maybe the coaches value a little bit more than the fans do, because of the pace that he's able to, like Xavier plays that fast pace, and he's so good at pushing it up the floor consistently that I think maybe opposing coaches worry about him and the way he makes the game feel more than fans do as production.
Let me ask you this, and this is completely a hypothetical. Where would Desmond Claude fit in with this team if he was here? Would it be a fit, or would it be too much of a ball dominance?
No, I mean, Des Claude is a talented basketball player, and you can always use another high-powered guard. The thing I would say is I think he would really like playing on this team more than he did a year ago because there's space. There's guys who can spread the floor and give him more room to drive and attack the basket. Now, would it be as good for the rest of the team if you have a guy who needs the ball in his hands, who wants to be driving downhill as much as Des does? I don't know. That's a good question. I would still lean towards I want to have the best player available and figure it out from there. So I would take him on my team, certainly. But he would definitely benefit from playing on a team that could space the floor like this with 2, 3, 4 shooters at a time around him.
Yeah. Lastly, on the basketball front, Quincy Olivari making the list. I know it's a 2-way contract, but A, it took me by surprise, and B, his reaction to that and the whole Steph Curry thing. Did you see that? And B, my gosh, that was really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Quincy is one of those guys who, if you get him seen, if you let him in the door, if anyone gets to know him, he's going to flourish every time because he's just got incredible charisma. He's incredibly genuine. He's just a nice guy, and he's good. He tries really hard. He really cares about what he's doing. And so I'm not surprised that people are taking to him and that his story is blowing up and he's going viral because he's great in front of the camera. I am surprised that the Lakers kept him. Like after the first game where he came in and he shot well, I go, okay, yeah, that's great. It's a fun story. It's a fun night for Quincy and Xavier fans, but like, people, you got to be real. The Lakers aren't going to keep him. And not only were they not going to keep him anyway, but they also have an extra guard spot being taken up by Bronny. So it's like, there's definitely not going to be an extra spot for him. But I think, Skinny, he really lucked out going to the Lakers and playing for the one coach who probably values what he does and maybe is willing to think outside the box more than any other coach in the league, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great story for sure.
It really is. We also had the Big 12 Media Day. Cincinnati picked 6th behind Kansas, Houston, Iowa State, Baylor, and Arizona in that order. The Bearcats.
So think about this for a second. So UC was selected as 20th in the first AP poll, and good for them. They're 20th in the country and 6th in the league, and that's probably right. I think they're probably picked where they should be picked. God, it just tells you that league is going to be just insane.
It is insane, and it's also like the league is really good, so they deserve a lot of notoriety. We've also gotten to a point with the Big 12 where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, we all talk about how good the league is, and then they have to play each other. So it's like, well, they're all just really good then at that point. If we all decided they're already good and they're going to have to play each other anyways, and the non-conference schedules kind of are what they are at this point when there's only a couple big games anyways, that's like, you don't find out that much during the non-conference.
I mean, remember the argument last year for them manipulating the net, I guess.
They're playing that game, and they should, because they have got everyone on board with the fact that they're the best conference, and they are, but it also plays into their favor a little bit this time of year when we're doing preseason rankings. Everyone's just like, well, yeah, of course they have 6 teams on the top 25 or 7 teams on the top 25. It's like, well, I mean, do they really, or is there that much separation between them? It seems like they just got a lot of good teams is what I would tell you. I don't know where they all should be ranked exactly, but Bearcats beat Ohio State 80-62 in their exhibition. They shot 54.2% from the field, 10 for 26 from beyond the arc for 38.5%. They had 3 players in double figures. 7 different players hit a 3-pointer for them. Not necessarily any standouts in this game for UC, but Dylan Mitchell and Seamus Lukosius each had 12 points. And Day Thomas came off the bench in this one, which I thought was interesting because we were talking about, like, would he start? Would Jizzle start? Would you start both of them? He came off the bench, but ended up scoring 11 points.
Yeah, they got depth, man. I think the biggest question mark for them is who has the ball at the end of the game. Is it Jizzle? Maybe it is, and maybe he proves that time and time again. I think that's the one interesting thing to me is who's the guy when you got to have one that goes and gets you one. It's probably him. I know you could argue Skillings, but I think that's the thing that needs to be sorted out for them. And then what is their best lineup combination at different times?
I mean, heck, Seamus was kind of that guy for him last year, was he not? He was kind of the go-to offensive weapon late. So I'm curious to see that, but I do think the starting lineup that they ran out for this exhibition is their best starting line, or the best lineup, in my opinion, the lineup that I wanted them to use. Connor Hickman did not get the start, the transfer from Bradley. I was curious if he might start, and Day Thomas did not get the start. Those were kind of the 2 guys that I thought could change the lineup. And fortunately, in my opinion, they left both of them out.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in getting some scoring punch off your bench. I really am. I think there's something to be said for that. And as long as those guys can handle that role. Now, listen, I think Cal took it too far of a degree last year with Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd, for goodness sakes. But I think there's something to be said for that.
Well, speaking of Cal and Kentucky, the Wildcats beat Kentucky Wesleyan 123-52 in an exhibition. Jackson Robinson led the way for Kentucky with 19 points. He was 7 of 12 from the field and 5 of 9 from 3-point range. Otiga Owe had 18 points. He was 7 of 9 from the field, knocked down a pair of threes, also had 5 rebounds and 3 assists. UK, this is what fans want to hear, Skinny. They want to hear. To look different. They want to shoot the ball. They want to pass the ball. They want it to move around. They want a modern offense. They were 21 of 42 from 3-point range. 32 assists on 48 made field goals.
That's crazy. 32 assists to, I think, was it 6 turnovers?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And that's incredible. Listen, okay, so I know we can point and go, it's Kentucky Wesleyan, and rightfully so. It's a Division II school. I believe they had 4 starters back from the team that, and again, this is not a great qualifier, but from the team that won an exhibition at Louisville last year. I think they had 4 starters back off of that team. So, wowza.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that score means nothing. This performance means nothing overall. But again, from a stylistic standpoint,
yeah, the way that you wanted them to play is the way they played.
Yeah, and the fact that all 3 of these teams, they we talked about, it looks like they're going to be deeper this year. It looks like they're going to have more offensive firepower, and they're going to be more fun to watch. All 3 of them, it'd be hard to argue that's not going to be the case after seeing their first public action.
Yeah, so I didn't see the game, but I got in my car. We had basketball practice last night, and so I got in my car about 5 till 9. It ended pretty quickly, actually. And so I hear Tom Leach, the play-by-play guy. The first thing I heard him say was, I thought he said Kentucky had 2 players in double figures. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is probably what it was supposed to look like. You know, a bunch of new guys playing together, a team that was gritty enough to go to Louisville last year. And he said, we'll be back and recap the highlights after this. So they come back, and I'm like, so what was the final, 68-60? And then when he said the score, I went, oh, dear lands. And he did say, I think Kentucky had 2 in double. He meant to say Kentucky Wesleyan had 2 in double figures. And then he starts reading off the box score. I went, my lands of Goshen. They did way more than I think even the most optimistic fan could have wanted them to do in that game.
Yeah. And it's like, for UK fans, they were going to be giddy regardless. They were just so done with Cal. They're so happy to have something new. Yep. And Mark Pope has been perfect for them. He's been totally a breath of fresh air. He's done a great job of handling the fan base and making it feel like, I guess to them, the old Kentucky in some ways, bringing some older donors and stuff that have been ostracized a little bit. There's a lot of things that have built up a lot of goodwill that he's done, but none of it could have gone better than this first exhibition where they're spraying the ball all around exactly like he told them they would. His system, his style of play from BYU has clearly made it over to Kentucky, and it looks good. Now, will they still be okay with it if it can't get past the second round of the tournament or something like that? No, that's not going to be the case. But for right now, to start the season, everything is happy in Lexington.
Next comes, you know what comes from next? Secret scrimmages.
Who do they have for secret scrimmage?
I don't know. That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I did I heard the UC post game show from Friday night when I was coming back from a high school football game. And actually, Wes Miller let slip that, we're playing Pittsburgh in a secret. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm like, oh, I mean, does anybody really care?
They are allowed to say it. They're allowed to say they're playing the game now.
I think he literally didn't think he could say it.
I know, but these coaches are so silly.
They're super secret.
By the way, Kentucky is not playing a secret scrimmage. They're going to play a second exhibition on Tuesday against Minnesota State Mankato.
Okay.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's a big, bison head or bull head, steer or something. It's got horns on it.
Hang 144 on them and declare them national champs.
That's what I would do. All right. We've got our pick'em segment to do. A good week for you. You were 4-2 last week to bring you to 28-24 overall. I was 2-4 to drop to 25-27. Our best bets hit once again. I had Miami -4.5 at Louisville, which worked out. You had Illinois +3.5, and you said take Illinois on the money line too. Do them both, and both of them won. So a great week for you on the best bet segment. Saturday at noon, we have Nebraska at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are 25.5-point favorite. The total is 48.5.
Yeah, the hook there scares me for some goofy reason, and I don't know what Ryan Day is going to be like as a defensive play caller. I just don't. Ohio State gets out of here with an easy win, but I think Nebraska finds a way to cover. I'll go Ohio State 34, Nebraska 13.
All right, so that is Ohio State and the over.
The under, just the under.
Just under, yeah.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna go. I wish I would have looked this stat up. I just ran out of time, but I don't know what Ryan Day is against the spread after a loss, but this feels like we're going to take it out on someone type of situation, because I do think this Ohio State team is still really good. I
don't know, man. The whole defensive thing just has me like, are you that desperate? Are you really that? I mean, you played a really good team.
No, that's the thing. They're not that desperate, and they're still this worked up over it. And he's having to do all these theatrics and drama because people want to put him on the hot seat, even though it's undeserved. I think they're going to come out and blow him out. I'm going to go 42-10, Ohio State in the over for me. Saturday at 7:45, we have Kentucky hosting Auburn. The Wildcats are 2.5-point favorite. The total is 42.5.
Okay, so Auburn has played 5 Power 5 conference teams: California, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri. They have not scored they've scored less than 20 points in 4 of those games. The most they scored was 21 against an Oklahoma team that is horrifyingly bad. Honestly, I'm going to pick Kentucky just because I think they are the better team here by far, because it's at home and all of those things. But if they've checked out and you lose to this Auburn team, land of Goshen. That's all I can say. I'll go Kentucky 27, Auburn 13. So Kentucky in the under. Fade me if you want, people. I get it. My buddy who called me the other day, my guy BB, he was mad that I led him down a bad path. I wanted to say, listen, if you'd have just taken Kentucky and then followed me on the Illinois path, you would have gone 2-1 with one of those 2 wins on the money line. You would have made a profit.
First of all, if anybody is following like our UC or our Kentucky bets at this point,
Correct.
That is on them.
That's on them.
Second of all, I am not betting these Kentucky and Cincinnati games at this point. Like I
was all in on the Arizona against. I loved UC against Arizona State. I thought that they would win handily.
I did not. I had Arizona State to cover. But either way, I'm not. These bets are for a pick'em right here. The best bets are something I'm actually betting. These are for a pick'em. I'm not actually putting money on Kentucky and Auburn. I can tell you that right now. I'm going to go Kentucky 21, Auburn 17, Kentucky in the under for me too. But I mean, like you said, I have no idea what to make of this Kentucky team, and I haven't been able to ever since the South Carolina game. They've had me in an absolute pretzel all year. Saturday at 10:15, we have Cincinnati at Colorado. Colorado is a 5.5-point favorite. The total is 57.5.
This feels like a track meet. I don't know why.
I hope it is. I want this to be a high-scoring, fun game.
I think if it is, though, I just don't know if UC can quite keep up. I'm going to go. I hate to do it because I picked UC more times than not probably this year.
You have
not? I'm going to go Colorado 37, UC 30. I just don't know if they can keep up in that kind of game. They did against Texas Tech, but also fell short in that game too.
So Colorado and the over. I'm on that same side of things. I want a high-scoring game. I want a fun game. I'm 35-28, so we were very similar on our scores there. Colorado and the over for both of us, which brings us to our Bengals game at 1 p.m. on Sunday. The Bengals are a 1.5-point favorite. The total is 47.5.
So I know people are going to look up and go, the Eagles, really good team last year, started 10-1. Yeah, they faded. Now here they are 4-2. In a strange scheduling quirk, do you know who the Eagles have played the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, Giants and Browns.
Yeah, how about in reverse order? They played the same 2 teams in the last 2 weeks.
That's weird.
Which is odd to me. So, listen, the Eagles did run for 269 against the Giants, and dominated them more than the Bengals did. I just feel like the Bengals have a little momentum going at the moment. Yeah, it was ugly to find ways to win, but I think sometimes you got to do that. I think the offense gets a little bit back on track. I don't know if they can get to the 30s, but I'll go. It's going to be a close one, and I'm going to trust Evan McPherson, who's missed some kicks here of late. I'll go Bengals 27, Eagles 24, McPherson from 47 at the gun.
Oh, okay. So that is Bengals and the over.
Yes.
I'm going to go 24-20, Bengals and the under for me. What's your best bet?
All right, and I'm probably, this is one you may want to fade me on because I don't know why I'm in love with this game. They're playing it at MetLife Stadium. It's Navy and Notre Dame. Navy's getting 12.5. You got to look at who they've played. It hasn't exactly been a who's who of teams, but damn, their offense is so much fun to watch. They did put 56 on Memphis, and I thought Memphis is a fairly legit team, to be honest with you. And they hung 56 on them. They did give up 44. I like Navy getting the 12.5. Is that you?
Skinny, can you tell me what my best bet
That's
is?
Hilarious. You're the exact opposite. I love it. And you got a 3. Is that a 3-team
I have Notre
parlay?
Dame minus 12.5 at Navy. And then also that's my best bet, but I also really like take Notre Dame all the way up to 18.5. It says 28.5. Take them up to 18.5 and take Utah up to 9.5 at Houston for a reverse teaser together.
Ooh, boy, the Utah one I don't like at all, just because they're a mess at the moment without Cam Rising. They are a mess. That's
I agree,
funny,
and I think that line reflects that.
That is funny. Well, one of us is going to be right.
Yes. No, by the way, I tried to talk you out of this Notre Dame thing earlier this year, and you didn't listen to me. I don't know why you hate this Notre Dame team so much.
I'll tell you what. I found another one I like even more.
No. Don't back off it now.
Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to talk me out of it.
No, I'm telling you you're wrong. I'm not trying to tell you should get a free pass out of here. You should take the L.
Yeah. I may even take Navy on the money line just to spite you.
I can't wait till this game kicks off on Saturday. I didn't care that much about it, but now I do.
I'm crazy enough. I love watching the service academies, and this is they actually throw the ball around a little bit. They're really creative in what they do. This isn't like the total triple option Navy that we're used to. They run some of it, but they are crazy fun to watch. So is Army. I mean, the fact that them and Army are ranked, I think, is super cool.
You're a big support the troops guy, and you're blinded by that. No offense, but you are.
I know. I like Air Force Academy most of all, and they suck this year, unfortunately.
All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything. We'll start with this one, a little Cincinnati, Colorado question to get us started here. Do you think John Cunningham made the right call in December 2022, not interviewing Deion Sanders and instead hiring Scott Satterfield? This person also acknowledged Deion makes $5.7 million compared to Satterfield's 3.6. So maybe Deion was just too expensive. But let's take that off the table. Do you think it was the right decision?
I do, only because, and listen, I don't know if Scott Satterfield was the right decision. I think the jury is still very much out on that part. But if we're putting them head to head, I actually do. Listen, Deion's doing some good things at the moment. What's he do when Shador's gone? Is it the next best case opportunity for him? Does he look to go somewhere else? Is he able to, if he doesn't, is he able to bring in the right replacement? What does he do without Travis Hunter? Now, I will say, I mean, he's got way more of a complete football team this year than they did last year. Last year, it seemed like a two-man circus with Shador and Travis Hunter. And at times early this year, they looked to be a five-ring circus, to be honest with you, but they've kind of settled in and played really sound football on both sides of it for the most part. So I can't say he's not doing a good job. I just don't know if I would call Deion Sanders a program builder. I just don't.
Colorado looks like the more impressive team to me, and there's no doubt that he has elevated that brand and made them relevant in a way that no one else has across college football, but definitely Scott Satterfield could never do at Cincinnati. So from that perspective, it would have been fun to have Deion here. It would have been interesting. There would have been a lot going on.
Great question.
I would be concerned if Deion Sanders was my head coach because of what you just laid out. What happens after this year? When Shador's gone, when Travis Hunter's gone, does he even really care? Like, it definitely feels like a big look at me, I'm the show type situation at Colorado. And maybe that's fine because Deion continues being the coach there. He's got enough cachet in the transfer portal to bring in bigger, higher profile names. If he has enough NIL money, he'll be fine. Like, I can be talked into that's going to work out for them. But I would be concerned that, you know what, this is just a bit of a circus. He has just enough talent with his son, and Travis Hunter was basically his adopted son there, that they were never going to leave him. So he's fine. But like, what happens when you really have to interact with people you don't have any control over? You don't know if they're going to leave your team from year to year, and you have to do this like everybody else. That would concern me. Now, straight up, I would take Deion over Scott Satterfield, but given the situation we're talking about here, Cincinnati, 2022, was it the right call? I think I'm okay with what John Cunningham did, honestly. I think it turned out okay for UC.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it really, truly is. To your point, it probably is a moot point because of the monetary difference, but it's a great question.
Yeah, and then the guy who asked the question pointed out the monetary difference too, so he was on top of that. Who is the most underrated player for the Bengals currently, and who is their all-time most underrated player?
The all-time most underrated, I don't know why I always come to James Brooks. He just did everything at a high level. He blocked. He blocked in the passing game. He blocked. That was back in the days of the split backfield, right? So you sometimes had to be a lead blocker on run plays. He could catch it like a wide receiver. He was a terrific runner, inside, outside, and it never felt like he was considered among the elite running backs in the game when he was, in my opinion. In fact, I'm on the record of saying I would have voted him into the Bengals Ring of Honor before Corey Dillon, fully recognizing Corey Dillon was arguably the greatest pure runner in Bengals history. I'll tell you, and one of the reasons I wanted to write the story this week, I think Zach Moss, what he does in the passing game as a blocker is really, really underrated. I do. And maybe that's just me looking at gritty guys like that. because I'm trying to think who else would even come to mind as underrated. Eric All doesn't quite get enough snaps, but I think he's done a great job. He had a block the other day, Rick. It probably wasn't shown on TV. He took a corner 15 yards down the field and kept right on blocking him. It was pretty impressive. I can't think of anybody else that I would go put in the category of underrated. I really don't. Do you have somebody
on this team?
Yeah.
I mean, I underrated probably isn't right because he gets talked about a lot because he's a local guy, but it almost feels like Sam Hubbard can be underappreciated at times because he's not a sack guy.
Well, and early in the year, I mean, we didn't know it until we talked to him about it. He didn't want to talk about the injury portion of it. We didn't know he was dealing with coming back from a hamstring injury in camp. And he looked, I remember how bad he was in the Washington game. He looked horrible, and the stats backed it up afterwards. And ever since then, as he's kind of gotten healthier and healthier, feels like each week he's gotten better and started to make plays defensively.
I might also be saying that because I'm as guilty of it as any. Like, I'm always the first one to be like, is Sam Hubbard actually good enough? Like, do we just need to find someone else there? Like, I'm always willing to press that button when things aren't going well with the defense. And then you're reminded of, like, he's a pretty damn good football player, man, over time. So, rank the following MLB Hall of Famers that played their entire career for their hometown team.
Okay.
Barry Larkin, Cal Ripken Jr., Joe Mauer.
How many we got here? How many we got here?
4.
Okay, dude, who's the last one?
Larkin, Ripken, Mauer, Joe Mauer, and Tony Gwynn.
I'm going to put Joe Mauer 4th on that list. I always thought Joe Mauer was a really good player. I don't know. Sometimes it's got to feel for me with the Hall of Fame. Like, you feel like a Hall of Famer.
I can't even tell you what Joe Mauer's stats are. I would just say he's 4th.
Honestly, off the top of my head, I couldn't either. Let me see if I can call him up here, Rick, on Baseball Reference. See if it'll let me do it real quick. Again, I like Joe Mauer. Did he get to 2,000 hits? He did. 2,100 hits. Career slash line of 306, 388, 439. And again, spent a good chunk of his career as a catcher. He spent the last 4 years as a first baseman. Yeah, but he still's 4th on my list. I'm gonna put Barry 3rd. I'm gonna put Tony Gwynn 2, and I'm gonna put Cal Ripken 1. Fully acknowledging that the whole Cal Ripken playing in the consecutive game streak is useless in my opinion, especially when they faked a power outage one day to let him out of it.
Oh, I like that. Hold on. Why is it useless?
I don't know. It's just, so you played in every game, and
it's like what you're supposed to do, right?
Well, were you hurt and played? Did you help your team because you were tired and played? I mean, did you just need to be in every game just to be in every game?
I love it. I don't think I've ever heard someone do a Cal Ripken Iron Man spin zone, but I love it.
Okay.
I'm all in on that. Let's like denounce Cal Ripken's Iron Man.
Did. I acknowledge I put him number 1 on my list.
That's true. What's one job you'd be terrible at and why?
Anything DIY. Like if I had to go work in a service station or a car repair place, you could give me every tutorial known to mankind and I'd somehow drop the engine block on my chest and kill myself. I just have no. I'm really happy when I can put oil in my car. Like if it's, I've got an older car and I have to put it in, I do routine oil changes, but I usually have to put some oil in between. Extra. Yeah. And I can tell because I'll hear the knock and ping and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to put oil in, and I can do that. I'm okay with that. You asked me to do you asked me to change a spark plug. You asked me to do anything else. I got no shot, none whatsoever. And I admire people that do it. Like my father-in-law was a plumber. I mean, these days, honestly, you probably make a heck of a lot better living being an HVAC repair guy or a plumber than the things that I do for a living. So kudos to you. I have no skill in that whatsoever. And it's funny because my dad did. Like I said, hell, my wife can fix more things around the house than I can't do anything. I can't.
Yeah, we're both useless when it comes to anything handyman work or for me.
I just don't care. It's terrible.
Yeah. I'm gonna say I would also be terrible at the fast food industry. Anything where I'm putting stuff together, I'd be bad at it.
Oh no, I actually was a McDonald's cook in my high school years and college summers, and I was pretty damn good at that. I
would be bad. I just don't have something about like my finger dexterity or something. Like when I work for a Skyline guy,
I could have both grills going with quarter pounders on one grill, regular hamburgers on another, and the vat of filet of fish going off. I could do it, man.
Well, you remember when I ran NKY Fan and our offices were above a Skyline. Well, there are times where like the people in the office would go down and help the Skyline. Like if they're short or if it's a rush, they would go down and they're like, brewing are like, you're going to help us. And I'm like, I will, but you really don't want me to. And they're like, well, it's all hands on deck. And like, I went down there and they're like, Yeah, get him out of here. He can't help.
Get out.
Yeah, he's not a Skyline guy.
The chili goes in the bun, not on the floor, Brewing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'd try, but you should see how these people do it. They have like 6 lined up on the thing. They're like, wow, wow, wow.
Dude, I've watched it.
They can fly through it.
It's incredible.
Too slow.
It really is. There's a skill set to that. I'm
mucking up the process for them.
Yep.
All right, a couple Halloween questions and we'll get out of here.
Okay.
Which has the better fall food drink derivatives, pumpkins or apples?
Oh, apples. I can't do pumpkin spiced anything. Ugh.
Which is the goat candy for Halloween?
I'm just, if you just gave me a regular sized Hershey bar, I would take that and run to the unwrap it and shove it down my gullet.
Fair
enough. How about for you? I know most people go like Reese cups.
Reese's are great.
They're okay.
My kid's allergic to peanut butter though, so we gotta not do that in our house anymore. So I'm gonna have to. I guess, man, Snickers has peanuts too. I mean, maybe a Twix. Maybe a Twix is fine. For some reason, I'm going to call her out on the podcast. Kelsey Conway of the Enquirer is anti-Kit Kat bar. I've never known anybody anti-Kit Kat bar in my life. Yeah, I mean, no one has Kit Kat as their favorite, I don't think, but it's always like a solid option.
Solid choice.
No
it's a really solid choice. I mean,
what's the dislike?
I don't know. I think it's the texture.
Crispy wafer she doesn't like.
So I bring this up because we had one of the Bengals media relations people brought in Halloween candy for the media room yesterday, which was very nice, and it had a nice array, but she was grabbing through it, and we actually, before she got in there, we grabbed a couple of the Kit Kats and put them on her desk just to tick her off. But she's like, "Oh, I'm enjoy yuck." I go, "Oh, come on." So I everybody else in the thing were like, everybody did the yuck thing. I popped it in my mouth and went. They're like, "Why?" I go, "I don't know. It's coconut and it's an almond and it's chocolate."
I love coconut. Yeah,
but most of people said they didn't like it. They didn't like the texture of the coconut.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like coconut for some reason, but I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I was good. I was the one that got to eat the almond joys.
I've got 2 more for you. I don't know if you've had. I should have said these. The guy was thinking chocolate, but these are like the gummy things. Have you had the Nerd gummy clusters?
I'm not a gummy guy.
Well, these are phenomenal. And then the other one, and I got this just this fall here from Xavier's basketball practice. It's like an obsession inside the Xavier basketball program. Have you ever had High Chew candies?
Oh yeah, I don't like them very much, but yes,
they're unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't like them.
I've never seen them before. Are they like an old candy that rebranded or something?
Yeah, it probably, yes.
Okay, they must have like redone their whole candy. It's fantastic now.
Yeah, I can't think of the company. Because they made like 3 different flavors back, like vanilla, chocolate, strawberry.
Oh, no, these were like tropical island flavors.
Oh, no, so then that's different.
Crazy
than
good.
Yeah.
Very good.
If I'm not most candy for me is chocolate. If I don't, I used to be on it. I don't do it anymore because they turn them into chewy ones. But the original Sprees.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. Just all they are sugar pellets, but I like them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll wrap it up with this, Skinny. Rank the classic Halloween monsters: Frankenstein, vampire, mummy, witch, werewolf, zombie, ghost.
Zombies at the bottom. I never understand the fascination with zombie movies. I just don't. I mean, the premise is stupid. So I don't watch them. So I'm putting zombie at the very bottom. I'll put
Frankenstein kind of sucks too.
Yeah, but he was man-made. So I don't. Yeah.
If you don't put ghost number 1, we're gonna have a problem.
No, I'm getting to that point.
Okay.
I'm gonna put werewolf just above zombie. I'll put Dracula above him. I'll put Frankenstein, then witch, because there can be hot witches. We all know that. And then
mummies kind of suck too, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, mummy would be next to last. Yes. I'm sorry. So mummy would be next to last. Werewolf would be above mummy. Yeah, I never understood mummy either. Oh, ghost is clearly at the top. There's not even there's like a big gap between ghost and witch.
And we're a well-known ghost podcast, ghost supporting podcast.
Very much so.
All right, that's all we got.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate it as always. We'll be back next week as we move another week closer to the start of the regular season in college basketball. Much more NFL, college football, and more. And keep the questions coming. For Rick Boring, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.